Iraq and Syria. Elliott Abrams is Senior Fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. He also served as Deputy National Security Advisor in the administration of President George W. Bush, where he supervised U.S. policy in the Middle East. Elliott joins me now from Washington with his perspective. Elliott, welcome, Bottom Line. So today the President has announced this new coalition, the usual suspects, Canada, Australia, Britain, all on board, also Turkey. What is this coalition actually going to do on the ground? Are they going to be able to powerfully turn the tide against Islamic State?
Well, those are the right questions, Olivia. You know, everybody is saying no boots on the ground. The idea is that the fighting forces will be the Kurdish army, the Iraqi army, and maybe the Syrian rebels. Now, they're going to need help. So what we need to do is organize that help from all the countries you've mentioned. Military aid, training, intelligence, if they're going to do the fighting for us.
The President has said he wants to have Arab Sunni states in the region play a role in the fight against Islamic State. What are the prospects for that? Are we going to see Saudi boots on the ground? Are we going to see Jordanian troops?
No, I don't think you're going to see their troops. I think you're going to see some money from the Gulf, Saudi money, Emirati money, Kuwaiti money. That's part of this idea. The other part is, where would the training be? If we're going to do training, say, for Syrian rebels, presumably Jordan, maybe some in Turkey. So there is a role for these countries, Middle Eastern countries, to play.
There are reports, of course, now that we are arming the Peshmerga, that we are also, of course, it's public, that we are calling in airstrikes on the ground in Syria. Is it just, in Iraq, is it just a matter of time, though, before there are airstrikes in Syria as well?
Well, that remains a very big question. I mean, we're coming to this late. You know, ISIS, the Islamic State, moved into Iraq and had some victories against the Peshmerga. Then we started helping the Peshmerga more. We weren't doing it because the government in Baghdad said, please don't do that. So we need to step that up a lot, the help for the Kurds. Same thing with the Syrians. I mean, we've been doing very little for the last couple of years to help the Syrian rebels. So that's really got to get going if we're going to have the kind of impact we all want to have.
Is it the right move to launch strikes in Syria, though?
I think it is. I mean, I've thought this for a while now. The Islamic State has obliterated completely the border between Iraq and Syria. It just doesn't exist in the real world. And our own military is saying it's one theater militarily, the Iraqi-Syrian theater. So if we say that we're only going to strike on one side, we're just defining Syria as a safe haven and base for the Islamic State. That's crazy.
But, of course, if we drop missiles, aren't we just helping President Assad?
Not if we're helping the Syrian rebels who are opposing him. Those two things have got to go together.
Do you think there is a coherent group of Syrian rebels left that we can be funding and helping arm to take on Assad and Islamic State that want our help?
Yeah. Good question again. I think there is. It says in the newspapers that we've trained 4,000 of them. That's not classified information, I guess. We need to do a lot more of that. You know, if we jump into this, if it's clear that the Americans are behind this, we'll train you, we'll get you some money from the Gulf. More and more people, I think, will join those rebels. Some of them have moved away from those groups because they thought, well, the Americans are not behind this, nobody's interested, they won't pay you a salary, they're not well armed. If we turn that around, I think we can really build these groups up.
I sometimes get the feeling that sort of all roads lead to Doha here, you could say, because the Qataris are helping fund some of the rebels in Syria. They are helping broker peace talks or ceasefire talks with Hamas. They are also helping the U.S. negotiate with the Taliban by providing a forum to be an interlocutor. What is the Qataris' role here in all of this, and what is their agenda?
You know, it's amazing. It's a tiny country. It's got about 250,000 citizens. Everybody else is a foreign worker. Tons and tons of money. They want influence. They want a place at the table. In fact, being so tiny seems to energize them into wanting to play a bigger and bigger role. They are longtime rivals of the Saudis, so they like to propel themselves forward as an alternative to the old Saudi influence in the Middle East. Their ideology, you know, is a great question, because religiously they are Wahhabis, like the Saudis, which is a form of very conservative Sunni Islam, and they have very good relations with the Muslim Brotherhood states. That's one of the reasons they are in such a bad relationship now with everybody else in the Gulf. They seem to believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is part of the wave of the future, and that is in the long run going to create a lot of friction.
This summer, just finally, you wrote a piece entitled "The Man Who Broke the Middle East," referring to President Obama. You write, quote, "Where administration policy has had an impact, the story is one of failure and danger." We, of course, did point out that you used to work for George W. Bush, so
right.
Perhaps you're wearing your politics on your sleeve here. But what is it that you think President Obama so misjudged in the Middle East? We were all so hopeful back in 2009 when he went to Cairo and gave that speech. What do you think he got wrong?
He got several things wrong. The idea that we could get to an Israeli-Palestinian peace right away was just wrong, and so several years of effort were wasted. More seriously, on Syria, his own cabinet, I mean, people like Secretary Panetta, Secretary Clinton, Secretary Kerry, David Petraeus at the CIA were urging support for the Syrian rebels 2 and 3 years ago. And Obama said no. And it's in that vacuum that he created that the Islamic State grew. That was a terrible misjudgment. He also pulled out much too fast from Iraq, creating another vacuum there for the Islamic State militants to grow in. So I think there's a lot of errors that he made, very often turning down the advice he was getting from his own cabinet.
Elliott Abrams, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Coming up on Bottom Line, deep in debt.